And turn on the recording. Great. Well, welcome to our attendees of the Tipping Point Grant Writing Workshop. We have some prepared slides that we're going to go through and share some information about how the Tipping Point Grant Writing, the Tipping Point Grant program works, and share some grant writing tips. And we have time in our agenda for discussion. Before we pull up our slides, I'll briefly introduce myself. I'm Rachel Nygaard, and I work as the Director for Strategic Partnerships, which is the office at Buncombe County, where Tipping Point grants are housed. And I'd like to pass briefly to Sarah.
Sorry, I had too many windows open. Hi, everyone. My name is Sarah Jess, and I am a grants manager working in the Strategic Partnerships Department with Buncombe County. And I am very happy to be working with Rachel on this year's grant cycle. So very excited to see you all and meet you all and hopefully work with you all.
You will most likely encounter Sarah or Angeline in the course of your application to Buncombe County, and hopefully your award from Buncombe County going forward. Sarah and Angeline are the grants managers that oversee this program. So would you please pull up our slides and I'll run through the content. Next slide, please. Before we get into the details about the Tipping Point grant process, we will share some overview information about Buncombe County in general. And like I said, then we'll move into some information about crafting a successful application, and we've built in time for you to ask any questions. When people think about Buncombe County, they often think about our place, not necessarily the organization. And before we get into the Tipping Point grant information, we want to start with a little bit of grounding information about Buncombe County government, the organization. And we put this here on the screen for you to see the website for Buncombe County, to introduce buncombecounty.org and invite you to visit it. We will be coming back and referring to different sections of it throughout. This is a snapshot that's a little tricky to see on the screen, but you'll notice it's the organizational chart. Buncombe County has an annual general fund budget of more than $300 million across 25 different departments, which you see represented here on this chart. And Strategic Partnerships is situated within the Community and Justice Services arm, along with departments like Emergency Services, Health and Human Services, Libraries, and Recreation. Just to give a sense of the breadth of the county. And we do report up through Assistant County Manager DK Wesley, who's one of 2 assistant county managers at the county along with Sybil Tate. And we all work under County Manager Avril Pinder, who, not sure if you've met before, but joined the county in 2019. And this image lives on our county website under the administration section. We've also included some information here about our Board of Commissioners. The board is the group that will be adopting the different priorities for the county that we'll look at in a minute, and is the group that sets the annual budget for the county. And as part of that process, the Board of Commissioners approves the grant awards. Next slide. Buncombe 2025 is the term for the strategic plan that our Board of Commissioners adopted that we are currently operating under. And it's on our website at buncombecounty.org/2025. The reason that we've included it here for you is so that you can get a big picture sense of our priorities as an organization. Our strategic plan has 4 community focus areas, which are listed across the top: education, environment, resident well-being, and vibrant economy. So you can see that's pretty broad. And we also want to point out the foundations that are built into the plan because our board and our review committees for our grants really do pay attention to these values, such as equity. They'll be looking for those to be reflected in the projects that we direct funding to. This brings us to the point where we'll dive deeper into tipping point grants. buncombecounty.org/grants is the website that houses all of our community investment grant information. And you can see on this screen little snapshot of a document, and that's called the Grant Guidelines. The Grant Guidelines is the document with the details about this grant program. It's the go-to reference, sort of A to Z. It's dense, but it is filled with important information, and we've pulled from that for what we're highlighting this evening. Buncombe County celebrates, partners, and invests for a community that is healthy, safe, well-educated, and thriving. Tipping point grants are based on the idea that small investments in communities can yield huge results and amplify community involvement. These are small grants to help, like I said, amplify efforts. These grants are available to Buncombe-based nonprofit organizations with a 501c3 or similar tax exemption. Groups that would like to pursue a tipping point grant but don't have their own nonprofit status can partner with a nonprofit agency to be their fiscal agent. Projects must meet a public purpose, and funding must be used for a one-time expense, some kind of either new project or expansion, a new idea for an existing project, and expenses for one time. And that can be equipment, training, materials, even staffing, something that can be done within the 12-month period of the grant to help get that project either launched or on better footing. This grant program is not designed for ongoing operational costs. There isn't any limitation on eligibility to apply for a nonprofit organization that has received a tipping point in their past, a tipping point grant in the past. So, tipping point, the concept of tipping is the idea of a scale. The factors that define a resilient community are on that scale: connected people, positive places, and equitable opportunities. So the goal then is to offload those negative factors and stack up the positive factors. There's examples. So minimize things like unemployment and violence, and maximize those things that strengthen our community in order to tip the scales to greater resiliency. That's the concept of the tipping point, the tipping behind the tipping point grants. It looks like I covered some of this information on the previous slide, but let me just make sure. I wondered why what I was saying didn't exactly match what I was seeing on the screen, but I'll just repeat. Nonprofit, these are $5,000 grants to nonprofit organizations that operate in Buncombe County. It's got to be a nonprofit, so if you're not one, you can partner. It's got to be a new project or a new idea for an existing project, but there has to be a newness element to it. And the funding is not for ongoing operating costs, and the funding is not for private benefit. In the tipping point grant, you will encounter the idea of the Thrive model. So in addition to the scale, this is another model that we use. It was developed by the Prevention Institute, and it's a way of thinking about healthy communities. This from Thrive is where we get those categories of people and place and equitable opportunity, which are the structural drivers, or sometimes known as the community determinants of health. What I would say is not to worry too much about the technical side of this model. The grant cycle is shown here from a high level. We are in the application phase. At this time, we opened up the announcement for the grant funding in December, and grant applications are due in February. The grant review will occur in the spring, and grant awards will be made in June when the county commissioners adopt the budget. The review committee is the group that recommends, and then it gets presented by the county manager in her recommended budget, and the board of commissioners adopt that when they pass the budget, and then the funding lines up with our county fiscal year, which is July 1 through June 30. And once the grants are awarded, we establish performance contracts with grantees, and the contracts cover everything from deliverables and to reporting expectations, any required insurances, etc. We aim to make the tipping point grant process as easy and as accessible as possible. So there's not really heavy reporting requirements. For those that do get awarded, there are 2 reports, one at mid-year and then one at the end of the fiscal year, to tell us how the project has been going and how the funds have been used and any results that happened. Here's the timeline in date form. It's wild to see 2024 on the screen, but this funding is for July 1, 2023 through June 30, 2024. The recommended way to apply is to use our online grant application portal. We noticed quite a few organizations that haven't done business with Buncombe County before either signed up to attend this grant writing workshop or expressed interest, and we know are following along. And I'll say it's pretty easy to set up a new organization account. And it's also easy to set up a new user account. The system does have an automatically generated email that you have to click an activation link the first time you set it up, but it's pretty straightforward. If you need any help navigating the online software, please don't hesitate to drop a line. We're happy to assist. For example, sometimes an organization, someone else in an organization might have made an account a few years back and you want to link your new profile to the overall organization account. There are things like that that we can do on the back end to help out. We also, well, again, we recommend the online application. You can save your progress and come back to it, access organization history. There's a lot of benefits to applying that way, but we do also allow applications on paper if computer access or other reasons of using the application system or a challenge. Just stop by our office at 200 College Street or contact us. And we will be glad to assist. Do remember that February deadline.
February 10th.
Thank you. February
5 p.m.
10th. February 10th. It's a computer-based application software. So when 5 o'clock comes, it will shut off. That's something to keep in mind. Definitely don't wait until the very last minute to be putting your application into the software. I will also mention, I was just scanning to see if it comes up somewhere else. Because it's computer-based, another thing that it does is has a character limit. Sarah, do you remember the character count?
I don't, but I believe I'm not going to say a number. That's wrong. But
I
we
don't
will.
mind. I think it's 1,500 characters per box. And what that character count is based on includes spaces. So if you were to open the grant guidelines and get your grant application questions out of that, totally cool. You can start your own Google Doc or start your own Word doc and be kind of drafting how you're gonna answer. But the risk there is you got to make sure you're paying attention to keeping it within the character limits. The grant guidelines list the number of characters, Sarah, if you want to reference it. But that is a pitfall that we've seen before as people go in to the actual software at the last day or last evening and begin pasting in their answers and find that the computer's cutting off part of their answers or won't accept the proposal because it's over. If you do the writing in the system, there's actually a counter that will count down for you. It will accept some formatting, like if you want to use spacing, hit enter a couple of times and do it, space out your paragraphs, it will accept that, but it does eat into that character count when you do that. We will get to some of the tips. I don't want to get ahead of myself. Let's look at the application questions. This is the full list of questions. So again, we aim with Tipping Point grants to have it be as accessible and plain language as possible. The project description is a place for you to briefly explain the project. No need to overcomplicate that. Vision and goals are about giving you an opportunity to express what it is you hope to accomplish. How do you see the project making a difference? How does it tie to place, people, and equitable opportunity? Partners. Most community-based projects have partners of some kind or other. If you're using a fiscal agent, you would talk about that here. If it's something your own nonprofit is doing, it's likely doing it with the support of volunteers or other community groups, and you would talk about that here as well. It's seen as a positive to have partners. We're going to talk about the scoring in a second. The project budget We're asking you to upload a budget. We do not require that it's in a certain format, but we do have a template available for those that would like to use it, and that is accessed from inside the grant application itself. But this project budget is an upload button in the system. And then there's a sustainability question. Do know that the sustainability question is not scored. We only have 5 scoring criteria for the program, and sustainability isn't one of them. The committee wants the applicants to be thinking about what happens with a one-time grant. Would there be any kind of ongoing or sustained impact after the fact? But as a one-time project, it's not a requirement that you have a sustainability plan for the program or project. The scoring tool is designed, did I say there were 5 categories? There are 5 columns of categories. The scoring tool is designed to have the members of the review team work independently and then come together to select the awards. We have a budget of $100,000 for Tipping Point grants, and that means they can give 20 projects, 20 awards of $5,000 each, and the scores very much drive that selection. So newness, I just wanted to run through those real quick. Newness is important. A project should be either a brand new project or a new concept to an existing project. Maybe it's an expansion, maybe it's reaching out to a new service area, but that is a value. The Thrive model, meaning people, place, opportunity. The third one about being connected to a specific neighborhood or a specific location or a specific population. As you're talking about your project plan or your goals or your vision or your partners, think about where and who this project benefits. The committee is looking for tailored impact. Community goals above individual interests. Evidence of trusting relationships. So that's tricky, but that's that people piece of the equation. What the committee sometimes talks about is community-driven versus community benefit projects. They really want to see the community working together on its ideas, not just some kind of charitable public benefit, something that's hosted by an organization for a community. So again, grounded in that cultural identity or sense of place, that's very much related to having a specific neighborhood or a specific location or population served. The project scale appropriate to grant amount is about being reasonable about what $5,000 can accomplish. It is a lot of money, and it's also, in the big scheme of things, not enough to pay for things like a whole staff position. So making sure that we're smartly planning how that 5,000 could be used. Focusing on capacity building, so individuals or organizations have that organizational or individual strengthening as a result. Funding has the potential to tip the effort and the budget. As you put the proposal together, keep those scoring criteria in mind and glance at it a few times as you maybe before and after you get writing to see if it makes sense and is aligned with that. Feel free to use. Grant committees really like it when you use the language that they're looking for in your grant application. So you can talk about the uh, capacity building, you can talk about cultural identity, you can talk about sense of place, um, you can talk about the neighborhood or the location or population you're serving that you're seeing on the scoring tool to help them notice that your project fits in with what they're looking for. It's good to take your time and be clear. Concise is about keeping it brief. Just because you have 1,500 characters does not mean you need to use them. Grant committees definitely have a lot of reading to do, and it's not necessary to to use every word available to get your point across. We say be consistent. The place I've noticed this is sometimes in a project description, somebody will say what their idea is, and it includes reference to something that then doesn't show up later in the application when it gets to the budget. So that's because our ideas evolve as we go. So you can just go back at the end and take a look back for any of those details that that might have evolved as you're writing and make sure that they're consistent. Sustainability, don't be intimidated by seeing the sustainability question. Feel comfortable talking about sustainability. And in this case, with one-time funding, you're talking about, were there any kind of lasting impacts after this project has come and gone? Being relatable is always fine in my opinion, in all of our grant programs, because it's just humans. It's just members of the community that are sitting on the review team reading these proposals, and they're people like me and you. And it's especially true for the Tipping Point grant. They try to keep the questions conversational. They're not looking for people that have a ton of professional grant writing experience to come in and use certain lingo or anything like that. This is a chance for people in the community that are associated with a nonprofit to tell a little bit about their project in a way that's understandable to the committee. Also on the relatable side, if you have anecdotes or tidbits or anything that adds that human touch, stories or the that could be the origin story of the idea, what was happening when it was formed. It could be the story of somebody that might be impacted if this project were to happen. Think about that relatability and ask for help. We should have had that at the beginning and the end of this. We're here. If you hear nothing else from me or from Sarah or from Angeline, I hope you'll hear that we were here to assist. We want to be as responsive as we can year round, and definitely to you as applicants during the grant application timeframe. On that note, we have these grant consultations on our calendars. You can click this link, and Sarah, are you able to put that in the chat? It might be easier to click from there than the screen share. We have a way for you to sign up for a session with staff, and that's a time when folks can share how their application is going. You can ask questions. You can kind of pitch your concept. We don't score any of the applications or help recommend projects, so it gives us the ability to be in conversation and support without influencing the grants in any way. So we're here to help. That's our contact info. Rachel, Angeline, and Sarah. And if you want to take the slides down. We've got just a couple of folks that are with us live, and others that we knew signed up to get this information after the fact. So we'll share the recording and post it on our website so that others can access it. That's the content that we came in with. Amy, you're from an organization that I don't think that we have funded before, and Tanasia, you're from an organization that I believe we have funded before. I don't know if it's specifically through this program, but coming from maybe slightly different perspectives, are there any questions on either of your minds that we can talk about while we're here together?
Yeah, I have a question.
Sure.
Would you recommend, if I'm thinking about like a project, kind of a new project that we're doing, is it better to like put specific numbers on like we think it'll impact this many people, or is it okay to just leave it somewhat open-ended?
Either is okay.
Okay.
We have some grant programs that are really strict about that, and this isn't one of them. It's flexible.
Okay.
So to the extent that you're able to kind of imagine the reach, it's helpful to include that. That's to kind of that shares how many, how many people that committee members are able to kind of sense the scale of the project. But it's not required to put those numbers in. I wouldn't try to make up or try to work hard at an estimate if you're not sure. But
Okay.
if you've got a range in mind or something like that, definitely include it. When we get past the grant application process and get into the award phase, we work with each of the organizations to pick 3 to 5 things that they can count or measure through their project. So that'll be a collaborative process and supportive process. I don't know a lot about your organization, but I believe it has farm in the name. So you might be counting like how many people came and volunteered, or how many people received some of the farm products, or how many pounds or something like that. We do end up putting a few measurables in the scope of work, because it helps us to sort of set a goal and track progress toward it. There aren't any financial penalties or anything like that for projects that for whom the actual work went differently than planned, but it's a good practice that models how we do other grants at the county.
Great. Thanks.
Yep. Sarah, can you think of anything that I might not have shared that you sometimes get asked as questions, or that you think might be helpful to add?
Just want to reiterate with if you're applying in the grant software, if you have any issues with logging in, either creating a new account or if you have an existing account and have trouble accessing your password, we're happy to help with that. Also, submitting your application, very much recommend not waiting until the last minute. We always, year over year, have folks trying to submit their application, finish it up 10 minutes before that 5 p.m. deadline, and internet goes out, or there's a computer issue or some technical difficulty with the website itself, and that 5 o'clock deadline is hard and fast. So just make sure that you're in there early and give yourself plenty of time.
Yep, it's human nature to be deadline oriented. But hard for us to be flexible on that one.
And I don't have any questions, but I just wanted to, thank you guys for taking the time after 5 o'clock to do this. I always look for any kind of tips and tricks and, just anything that's informative to continue the work that I'm doing. And I actually had experience recently Now I know I've learned from that to not wait until the last minute, because sometimes when you download a document and then you can't find it because you're panicking.
Mm,
And I wasn't able to submit it, and it was like devastating, so I've learned from that.
well, we appreciate you, Tanisha, and all you do. I know that grant writing isn't one of the one of the reasons why organizations get into business. It's a necessary step in order to get resources to do the work. And the real reason we're here is the work on the other side of this, and the people that you're serving and the ways that you're helping the community. And we're glad to be able to be nearby and help you do the work you do.
Thank you.
Great. Well, if you haven't yet and you're interested, please consider signing up for a consultation session if you have anything you'd like to talk further about once you start putting pen to paper on your ideas. And it's also okay to just drop a quick call or email. Email is probably best with as much as we're managing at this point. We're able to be pretty quick in responding to emails. But yeah, good luck. Keep in touch, and looking forward to connecting again in the future.